Overtime with Joe Parker provides a comprehensive look into high school sports in North Atlanta. Tune in each week for prep sports headlines and in-depth discussions with local players and coaches.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Overtime with Joe Parker. I am joined here by a special guest today, and we're going to talk some baseball. And our special guest and joining me is Johns Creek head baseball coach Billy Nicholson. Coach, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Joe, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, we're very glad to have you. And I know that you have a pretty extensive coaching history, not only in the state, but kind of specifically in North Fulton. Can you talk a little bit about, I guess, give our listeners, kind of where your coaching career kind of started and how you got in this area?
Yeah, I started out at Southland Academy down in Americus, Georgia when I graduated from college, and that was, I've only been at 3 jobs, so that was my first job. Was fortunate enough to make it several runs to deep in the playoffs, 3 Final Four appearances, 3 state championship appearances before winning it in 2004. In 2005, I came up and was selected as head coach of Centennial High School. Was there for 5 years, and then our AD that was there actually opened up Johns Creek and asked me would I come over and coach softball and baseball, and a lot closer to home because I live up in the North Gwinnett area. So was really thankful for that, and it's been a pleasure to be able to do that for the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm. And so for you, I imagine, as a lot of coaches do, you grew up and played the game and developed that love for it. Was that the case for you?
Yeah, I remember when I was real younger, watching the Braves with my uncle in his den for, it was like every pitch he analyzed. He was an umpire for 36 years in the high school ranks and college ranks. But just getting the feel for it then, and then actually playing just regular stickball in his backyard, and enjoying that aspect of it, and played since I was little bitty. My sister Kathy, who lives here in the Atlanta area, actually bought my first glove and first pair of cleats, and I remember riding her Pinto back and forth to Glenn County Parks and Recreation, playing baseball and all-stars and things like that. Graduated from Brunswick High School. Played for 2 Hall of Fame coaches, Jimmy Brown and Charles Skipper. So baseball was actually was just part of life. But I also ran cross country, played basketball and football. So that's why I'm a big proponent of kids playing everything that they can in high school nowadays.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, and so what kind of went into that move from South Georgia up here to the North Fulton area?
Being from a small town like Americus, gosh, I love it. I still call it home, even though it's not my home. I grew up in Brunswick, but I met my wife there. Having 2 young kids, I guess just the aspirations of wanting maybe a little bit more for my kids, and it's been, my wife and I talk about this all the time. It was probably the best decision I made career-wise was to move up here because both my daughters really flourished and were able to afford a lot more opportunities than you are in a small town. So, when I did move up here, prior to that, I was actually serving as a bird dog scout for the Braves, and when I moved up here, it just kind of opened up a lot more doors with them. So I got a job with the Braves on the weekends, and then on the summers, when summers came around, I actually joined up with the Rome team, and then when Gwinnett opened up in 2009, I was assigned to them, all for the exception of 1 year, where I had to go to Mississippi for the summer. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How did you get in with the Braves organization?
I throw really good BP, not bragging, and I also hit really good fungo. And I was working at a pre-draft event, and I threw to 2 groups, and legendary Paul Snyder was hitting fungos to the outfield. Went to throw BP and was getting water. And Dayton Moore and Mr. John Sherholtz came over and asked what I did in the summer and asked what I'd like a part-time job. They had a manager in Rome, Randy Engel, who'd been with them for, at that time, it was 35 plus years. He couldn't throw BP because of all the other years of throwing BP, so I kind of went over as an extra coach, and then my role kind of grew. There's a trust factor there. High school coach coming in professional baseball. I developed a lot of the charts that they still use today and lineup cards. I guess I'm famous around the high school ranks of being innovative, but I typed my lineup card out and put it on card stock, things of that nature with all the logos. So that just it just blossomed into something really, really nice. It was a great 17-year run, and as you get older, you kind of sort of want to look at things and see if you've kind of missed out on some opportunities. Like I was telling you earlier, last summer was supposed to be my first summer off, but USA Baseball called, and I've really enjoyed working with that group up there and their prospect development pipeline that they do for MLB. So.
Yeah, and if you could kind of go into that for our listeners, kind of what you're doing with
basically, USA Baseball has a group that will test. They go into different parts of the United States and test players in a number of variables, a number of different things such as height, weight, obviously, but the eye test, reaction drill, the 60, obviously, and the 30 yard times, bat ball speed, exit ratio, as well as spin rate. We put them through a battery of tests, and then every report that we do actually goes into the Major League database. So this year, June, when the scouts come, they actually have access to that, so that they've already been done all that homework and tests. Analytics is everything now, and that's just part of it. So, we last year I was in 3 cities in one day. I've never done that before. 3 states in one day. I was in Kentucky in the morning, Dunedin, Florida in midday, and then we flew to Chicago that night. A lot of fun. They're real passionate about what they're doing to help Major League Baseball. I loved it. It was a different set than just coaching. It was the other side of it, the analytics, as I said earlier, that's actually becoming a forefront in Major League Baseball.
Mm-hmm. And talk about that passion, from the sounds of that, being in 3 states at once, doing this over the summer. I think it goes without saying you definitely have a passion for the game.
Yeah, it's baseball's been very, very good to me. I've been blessed to have some really good players. I've been around a lot of outstanding people in this game, both at the professional, college, and high school level. And I was talking to Harvey Cochran, who's our executive director of the Georgia Dugout Club. I serve as president of that. We were talking the other day and just talking about the Hall of Fame inductees that's coming up, and just, Georgia has such a vast amount of really, really good baseball coaches and at the high school level, and just getting to, it's just an honor to be able to call some of those guys my friends, and knowing that, when I was young, if I ever needed anything, I could reach out to those guys, and that's what I kind of want to pass on the torch to the younger coaches as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. And you obviously talk about the coaching talent that's here. There's also just a ton of talent on the field as well.
Wow. It's Joe, it's unbelievable. We talk about this. You and I have talked about it before. Just this area, there's no easy day in a baseball schedule up here at a high school level. It's 3 games a week, and it's a grind. And if you look at the scores, it's just it's just unbelievable the amount of talent that you see on a baseball field at the high school level. It's nothing to show up to a field and see general managers there or scout directors, whether it's your players or somebody else's players. It's just an enormous amount of talent at the high school level here in this area.
Mm-hmm. And as involved as you are, obviously, in the baseball community, do you think that there's any certain kind of magic that this area has? Or
well, travel baseball is huge here. We're known as the mecca of the nation in travel baseball, and when kids are afforded the opportunity to play baseball, which I say it's too much baseball, but they pretty much play baseball year round here, and they're playing not only against talent but the very best talent in the country. And when you do that day in and day out, you either develop or you just become an average or below average player. And, this area has so many above average players. I mean, you look at the college rosters, the MLB draft, it's, Atlanta is really, really known for developing really good high school baseball talent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, from your perspective, who are some of those talented players that kind of stick out for you, either at the high school level or at the with the Braves organization that really just kind of stick out for you and go, that was a heck of a ball player?
Starting at the professional level, gosh, there was so many of them. I mean, you could have your back turned on the field during BP, and you could know that Jason Hayward was hitting. I mean, it's the way he struck a ball. Freddie Freeman was the same way. Ozzie Albies is just a special, special young man, just a wonderful talent, and just a great human being, just a super, super person. And another player, Acuna, and when he took BP, it was like a show. I mean, when you were throwing, you didn't want to turn around and look and admire a ball, but you couldn't help it sometimes because it was just the way he hit them. I would be doing an injustice if I named one and didn't name everyone, but there's a lot of really good players that we face in our region. I know one in particular, Mississippi State commit, Davis Rocos at Chattahoochee, was probably the toughest pitcher that we have faced over the last couple of years at Johns Creek and put us out of the playoffs last year. But I could go on and on and on about the different players and wouldn't be doing injustice to probably leaving some guys out. But just good high school baseball. I know that a couple of the places I've been to, I'm a people person, obviously, and would go up and talk to different people, fans. And a lot of times they were there just to see high school baseball. They had nobody there to watch. They just want to see good high school baseball. And I think that's a credit to our coaches and administrations here, especially in the North Fulton area, that hire good quality baseball people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you kind of made that transition from the high school into coaching at a higher level, was it kind of an adjustment for you, or?
No, I get that question a lot, especially from my high school colleagues. What's the difference? And I think the biggest difference is I'm not going to say that professional baseball don't have fun, because we have a lot of fun, but those guys are getting paid. So at 1 o'clock when the cage is open, you're going to be in there until 3:30 when you go get some water to go out the field for BP. So it was an everyday grind. Mm-hmm. That is the biggest thing. It's every single day. There's days you lose track of what day it is. But those guys are getting paid to do that, and that's what they love to do. And with high school, you can kind of sort of back off the pedal a little bit and say, "Hey guys, go be a kid day. Mm-hmm. Go get some ice cream or do something of that nature." As far as the game, it's the same. It's just played at a faster level, a real fast level. So.
With that as well, Coach, I have to ask, between coaching at the high school level, then with the Braves organization, now with USA Baseball, do you sleep?
Yeah, I do. I actually drive big charter buses part-time. I have a good friend of mine, Tommy Brown, and His Majesty Coaches. It's kind of a hobby of mine to drive, bigger pieces of equipment, things obviously coming from South Georgia, but no, I do. I spend one of my hobbies is the outdoors. I spend a lot of time down in South Georgia on a farm, whether it's riding four-wheelers, hunting, or just getting out and getting away from it all. I spend a good bit of time doing that, October, November, December. So, I was joking the other day, I have a long honey-do list that I have to complete, and I have a wonderful wife and family that's been so supportive of me for years, and I couldn't do this without them. I mean, they're my rock and foundation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And you kind of bring that up. I know the time commitment it is just being a high school coach, for instance. How important is that your family is also I guess becomes a part of you being a coach, because they have to.
My wife and kids, they have T-shirts made up, and they start donning them on in January, where they become baseball widow and baseball orphans. But they do come to a lot of the games. One of the things that I try to tell our younger coaches is leave things at the field. When you get time to spend with your family, cherish that time, and don't take the wins and the losses or the bad practices home with you. And that's something that it took me a while to learn it, but once I did, things seem to go a lot smoother. But when it's not baseball, then I devote all my time to my family, and that's something that I'm really proud of. It's it's not baseball season now. I still do some baseball things, but whenever my wife asks me to go somewhere or do something, then there's no questions asked. I'm gonna do it. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, Coach, I do want to talk about this season with Johns Creek. you guys go through, had this late season run, winning, I believe it was 6 out of your last 7 games of the season. But as we've talked before, it's always down to that last night. And unfortunately for you guys, through tiebreakers, you just missed out. I guess what was kind of that feeling when you guys had just missed out again?
Yeah, it's 2 years in a row. We just missed out. But again, it's you've got to win ball games early, and it was tough to do that, especially in this environment. Obviously, with the field problems we had, they're going to be resolved this summer. But playing our first 16 games on the road and not having a first full practice until after our 11th game of the year was kind of. I mean, we looked like we were practicing during playing baseball games. It's just that the errors that we would make would get magnified, or the base running mistakes, or the missing of the fly ball, bunt coverage is messed up. It just seemed like as we got more and more practice time, the better we played. Obviously, I mean, we won 9 of our last 11 ball games, and it was just it was really good. And to see the kids come together, they never complained. Not one time, Joe, did they ever complain. Get on the bus, let's go play. Next opponent, let's go. And we played 2 nationally ranked teams this year and split with them. But it's kind of a tough pill to swallow when you miss out being that close. And then you look in some of the brackets, and you got teams that are going in that they're getting because they don't have very big regions. I wish there was a power ranking system for 6A and 5A, because there's so many good teams that get left out every year in the playoffs. And so it was definitely a hard pill to swallow, especially for our senior group. What an awesome group they were. And but we our younger kids, we have quite a few younger kids on the varsity this year, and they learned from that. We hope. So that 2-1 loss to Alpharetta sunk us. And then when Pope beat Cambridge, we went from 3rd to 5th. So that kind of sort of ended our season. But yet, even knowing that Thursday night when that game happened, our kids went down to Dunwoody and won 2-1, and we had a wonderful senior day. Although we'd love for it to have been at our place, we had to move it out to Lake Point. So
we talked about that. Obviously, playing your first 16 games on the road is asinine to think of. I guess from a player's perspective. But do you really credit these guys, which lest we forget, these are 16, 17, 18-year-olds, for that resiliency to have to go on the road and then have this battle late in the season? Do you really credit them for again that battle?
I credit our senior leaders on that team. They were. We have this saying. I don't know if you've ever read the book John Gordon, No Energy Vampires, but anybody started. It was just. I'd look back over the season, and if there were any guys that felt like, complaining or, wanting to blame somebody else for their circumstances, we had some seniors that wouldn't let that happen. So it's a huge credit to those guys, a great senior class. But the resiliency overall as a team, our coaching staff, I mean, it's a lot of nights away from mom and dad and a lot of nights away from wives and families. And, it's just they were resilient all the way to the very end.
And with that, at this point, where do you kind of feel that the Johns Creek program is at from kind of an overall sense?
Well, we've been in existence 10 years. We've been in the playoffs 7 of those 10 years, I believe, and we've made 3 Final Four runs. We feel like we've built a really good program. One of the tough things is we don't have a feeder program. We don't have any field space to actually, like the Parkviews or the Brookwoods or the North Gwinnett's or any of the schools that have a huge recreation department. So that's kind of tough in that aspect. But, we feel really good about what we've built and what we're building. There's a tradition. Tradition never dies. And, we've got a really good core group coming back next year with our pitching staff as well as some position players. Our biggest glaring need is going to be catcher. We've got to fill that hole with Jared graduating. But it's high school baseball. It kind of goes in cycles, and we're seeing the mediocre cycle of it right now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you did touch on a trip to that Final Four, and I do think, since I've covered sports in this area, there's been a ton of headlines, more state championships than I can
Yeah.
count essentially. But in my mind, one of the, I think, biggest headlines was your run to the semifinals in 2016. 17. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm a year behind. Well, but with that, you guys get to the semifinals after this, late season surge, and then that game 2 against Lee County. I think just I don't know if I'll ever have to write an article like that again, where the GHSA has come back. And but for our listeners, can you talk a little bit about that run and leading up to that game 2?
That run in itself, the regular season kind of resembled this, Joe. We had to win our last 5 straight ball games to get in, and we did. I remember being down to Chattahoochee by 2 runs in the 5th, trying to think about, oh Lord, what am I going to tell the seniors? This is going to be our last game. And then all of a sudden we caught fire with 2 outs, with 2 strikes. That whole season was just a roller coaster of a ride, a lot of ups and downs. And, what happened was unfortunate in all aspects. A lot of people try to apply professional baseball rules and college baseball rules to high school, and there's a different set. And the high school rule says that every player must touch a bag, even though the bases were loaded. Unfortunately, I can't really go into it, but there was a call that was not correctly made, but it was a judgment call. We had to accept it. The problem is the application and how it was supposed to be applied. There was some electronic devices used to get a ruling, and you're not supposed to do that. So we were first turned down by the executive committee, and then I think the overall board heard it and granted us that extra game. I honestly feel to this day, so do a lot of our players, if we could have gone back down, in these playoffs, you're only good as your number 3 pitcher, and really your number 4. Going back down, the kids, we were supposed to go down 4 days later after the ruling. Then it rained, and it was 2 days later before we could go down. Well, the next available play date was the day after graduation. Mm-hmm. So getting on a school bus at 7 o'clock in the morning and traveling 4 hours down in an environment that was pretty hostile. Mm-hmm. A lot of emotions. We had a lot of seniors on that team, and it was just tough. It was tough. It was really, really tough. But, I can't complain. There's a lot of coaches that would have loved to have been in that same situation, and we've been fortunate to be there 3 times now in just our small 10-year existence. So I'd like to get to that championship game and see what can happen 2 out of 3, and that's what our goal is, just as every team in high school baseball, is to get that state championship game and can see what happens, especially now that the venues have changed and things of that nature. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And, with that, we'll definitely all be, watching Johns Creek here in the upcoming years. But, Coach, with so much of your life, dedicated to, baseball and coaching and being around the game, I have to ask, do you sit on the couch and flip on MLB Network?
Nope. It's funny, as a coach, you can't. My daughter, a perfect example, we went down to see 2 of our alumni, Bo Mikowski playing at Clemson and Cole Newber at Georgia Tech. And my daughter and I went down Sunday to see him, which was a treat. And she's like, Dad, are we going to our seats? I says, I can't sit down. I can't sit down and actually watch a game from beginning to end. I want to get at different angles and see different things. And so no, I might watch a couple innings here or there, but I don't sit down and watch baseball and get into the analytics and things of that nature. It's just very, very difficult. I love the game, but I love it in a different way. I want to see it from a coaching aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Coach, looking forward, I guess, we talked about kind of the state of the Johns Creek program. I know you guys have some guys coming up. Do you feel that, I guess maybe the future is still bright for the Gladiators?
Yeah, it's we feel like we don't want to play our best baseball at the beginning of the season, but rather at the end. And that's kind of been our motto since we've been in existence. And if you look at our records, we don't go in and try to play the weakest competition. We want to play the very best to prepare us for this brutal region, in hopes that if we do get out of it, things I don't want to say are easy, but it's like we've been there, we've done that. So our kids have gravitated to it. Our lower level program, the ninth grade and the JV. But again, it's a matter of having the talent that comes in there. As you know, up here in North Fulton, there's school on top of school. And it's a little bit different than the Loganvilles or the Walnut Groves or, the Calhouns or maybe, several other schools I can think of where, that's the only thing in town going. We got something in town going about 1.25 miles up the road in Northview. And then you go 3 miles and it's Chattahoochee, or 3.5 and it's Centennial, or right down the road it's Wesleyan and Norcross. So, it's a matter of getting baseball players in and developing those guys to have a championship mindset. And that's what our goal is every year. We're not going to be flashy. We want good baseball players that want to develop into a championship mindset.
Mm-hmm. No, very good. And, with that, you talked about the gauntlet that is Region 7 6A. We're here now as we record this, getting almost set for the second round of the playoffs. And, I know I've heard from you and many other coaches in this region as we got into that final push that, everybody kind of expected, Region 7, 6A teams, whoever it was, would go pretty deep in the playoffs. At the end of it, though, only Pope went through in that first round. Was that pretty surprising?
A surprise. Yeah, it was a surprise. I know Allatoona Alpharetta went, I think, 9 or 10 innings in their first ball game. And I'm almost positive Cambridge went extra innings. And even Pope almost got eliminated. They actually had to score with 2 outs, and they were down by 2 runs. But, it was a surprise. But again, there's a lot of parity in high school baseball in this area. It's we don't match up until later in the rounds with schools from South Georgia, where maybe baseball, I don't want to say it's not that big, it's big, but when you start playing teams that are of equal talent, have just as good number 1, number 2, and number 3 as you do, there's going to be some close ball games, and they could go either way. And that's kind of sort of all Dunwoody, Alpharetta, and Cambridge, their games could have went either way. But it was a shock. But Coach T. Ellis, Coach Lassier, Coach English, they all do outstanding jobs. Our region has a really good stable of coaches that, on any given day could be in a playoff and actually win a series or 2, or even go all the way to state championship.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll certainly looking forward to see, Johns Creek in that gauntlet again, and perhaps, making that playoff run next year. Coach, I want to thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Joe. And, thank you for all you do. Like I said, I came from a small town. America's Times Recorder used to send reporters out. A lot of times they were college students, maybe wanting to go into journalism. And I missed that. I loved picking up a newspaper. I still get the collegiate newspaper, collegiate baseball newspaper, but picking up the newspaper and seeing somebody like yourself, heart and soul, pour into it, where you get to know the coaches, the players, and that means a lot to us coaches, for all that you do. I know it's probably, like you were saying when we came in, all the sports that you have to cover, but just want to let you know how much we appreciate you.
Well, I very much appreciate those kind words. I can say I'm pretty spoiled. I have a job where I get paid to write about sports. So that's a good one to have.
That is really good.
All right. Well, Coach, thanks again so much for joining us on the show. And for our listeners and watchers out there, be sure to follow us on Twitter at OT with Joe Parker, and follow me for scores and updates throughout the week at Joe Parker GA. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for listening to Overtime with Joe Parker. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the show, and follow all of Appen Media's sports coverage at northfulton.com.